Hello, hello. Welcome, please come in. We continue our White Mage only journey this week in Final Fantasy III. Those who've been watching this channel for a while may be surprised that I'm including FF3 in this series, at least after the Red Mage debacle. And yes, I am also a bit surprised to have decided to include it. However, White Mages have a few points that make me want to include them. First off, unlike most other White Mages in the series, White Mages actually have offensive spells before the very end of the game. They get Arrow at level 2 and Eroga at level 6. This gives a decent offensive spell to take advantage of their high mind stat. And, of course, they can contribute to damage at endgame thanks to Holy, as they can in nearly every Final Fantasy. The progression of damaging spells alone made me want to include it. The other aspect that made me decide to include White Mage is present in the title. White Mages have an upgrade class in this game, the Devout, which is just White Mage but scaled for endgame. This was something Red Mage didn't really have, and yes, I've read all your comments on the FF3 Red Mages only video. I disagree, and I don't really feel like relitigating that here. So I will be playing most of the game as White Mages and then switching to Devout once it becomes available at the end of the game. We join our adorable little onion knights in this cave, pick up some items, get some levels, fight the first boss, who dies to our regular attacks. I could use the spell items the game gives me, but I need to save those. First boss defeated, I get access to the first set of jobs, and now everyone is a White Mage. Swing by the weapon shop to dual-wield staves, and the armor shop to buy new armor. And the magic shop to buy Poisona. Yep, the only spell I can get at this point is Poisona. I can get one copy of Cure by exploring this building, so that means I have one White Mage that can heal. A chat with Cid unlocks the airship and to the castle. Normally I'd beat up this griffin, but yeah, no, I'll come back later for that. I then head to the cave with the Jinn and try to do some leveling, and I get my butt kicked. Yeah, damage is going to be a problem, at least until I get Arrow, because wow, that's really not great. Actually, let's head back into the cave, because if I can get a fight with all skeletons, I can use my one cure spell offensively. Much better. Ooh, and I pick up a second cure spell. Some grinding done, it's time to face the Jinn. I throw out some Antarctic Winds, which doesn't actually finish the boss, but a few more regular attacks wins the fight. Barely. Okay, so that's kind of an oof. I really need to be able to buy some actual spells. Cleanse the Jinn ring in the water, then head back to Kazis to join up with Cid. Now that the town is uncursed, I can buy some mithril rods and better armor. The blacksmith puts a ram on our airship to break through this rock, which also destroys the airship. And Cid's hometown finally sells Cure. I can heal. I'm saved. Saved is a bit generous. I still don't have any damaging spells, but on Bahamut Mountain, I can get my first copy of Arrow. I don't have any spell slots to cast it yet, but that's fine. I'll be solving that shortly. By running away and jumping off a mountain, in tiny little Tosis, I can buy copies of Arrow for the whole party. I think it's time for a bit of grinding before I proceed. With Arrow being my only good damaging option, I'm going to need a few level 2 spell slots for everyone. That done, I can head through a cave, then into this pirate cave. Nothing useful here, and it's back out to the world map. And now it's time for the Sunken Shrine. As usual, I must complete this entire dungeon while minied. I do have Arrow now, though. Let's see what type of damage that deals. Okay, that's not actually too bad. I managed to defeat the giant rat without any issues. Then, I forgot to actually put the eye back in the statue, and I have to flee from the Nepto dragon. Let's actually put the eye in place so I can sail about. In this town, I get my first ice staff, which I can use to cast Blizzard at will from the inventory, which means another way to deal damage. Trek over to the village of the Ancients, which sells better armor, some better spells, and more elemental staves. Okay, I want all of this, but I can't afford it all. I guess I'll prioritize the staves for now so I have some reliable damage. I'll be back for spells and armor later. Exploring Castle Argus gives me just a lot of money. I really appreciate them leaving their treasury unguarded. The Golgans give me the Toad spell and a free mage robe, along with some elemental rods that I can gaze longingly at but not actually equip. And back to the village of the Ancients, where I can sell a bunch of trash in order to afford new armor and all the level 3 white magic. I'll come back later for a full complement of staves. Okay, distractions aside, it's time for the Tower of Owen, which is largely uneventful. The boss, Medusa, is also not especially interesting. First step is to determine if Arrow or Blizzard deals more damage. Obviously Arrow, so spam that a bunch until I'm out of level 2 spells, then switch to whatever elemental staff I have equipped on that character. Medusa has no weaknesses, so it doesn't really matter which element I'm using. Medusa is pretty durable, or I'm not dealing that much damage, but she also isn't dealing much damage to me. White mages have high mind to boost their white magic, but mind also impacts magic defense. Medusa can petrify, but I have more than enough gold needles to complete the fight. The Outer Sea is now available. First destination is Chocobo Town. I can steal a shuriken and sell it right back to the shopkeeper to buy some magic keys and have a bunch of money left over. I can spend this to buy level 4 magic, most of which is of dubious value. The magic keys can open some doors in Castle Arcus to a bunch of garbage, and a scholar robe. Okay, that's not bad. And it's time for the Dwarven Hollows. No new items in the shop, but I can toad up to head into the underground caves, and it's boss time. Basically same plan as last fight. I start by spamming arrow to deal okay damage to Gutsco. He can hit pretty hard and cast mini on my party. Unfortunately, he keeps only hitting half my party, so I don't even bother healing it. It doesn't actually impact my damage either way. And every time he does cast mini, there is a chance he'll just unmini someone. Arrow's exhausted, I have to switch to elemental staff casting, which is effective but deals considerably less damage. Gutsco's physical attacks are the real danger, particularly when he attacks a minied character. But I have Kira, and the fight ends in a victory. Gutsco then steals both horns, and it's time to delve into the fire cavern to investigate the second crystal. My recollection from the last playthrough is that Salamander is the first properly difficult fight in this game. Let's see if that's still true with white mages. Yes, is the short version. He's a lot chunkier than prior bosses, and his blaze attack deals huge damage to my entire party, combined with this game's functionally random turn order, and that's a non-starter. My damage isn't even awful, I just know that it's not going to be enough to break through Salamander's considerably better damage. So, time for some grinding. Some levels gained, and a brief side trip back to Ancient's Town to grab ice staves for everyone, and that didn't go well. Let's try this again. My damage is definitely higher, but Salamander is still able to devastate my party with Blaze. And this game not having clear turn orders means I still can't survive. Okay, I just need to grind up a bit more. I think I need to get just enough HP that my entire party can consistently survive 2 blazes in a row. That way I can be sure that I'll always be able to heal before my party actually dies. Back into the fight with just over 400 HP, and that should be all I need. I can predominantly use Cure to keep HP topped off, but pepper in a Cura when needed to really heal up when Salamander uses Blaze. My damage still isn't very good, certainly not as good as it should be at this point, but the survivability 4 white mages gets you is enough to beat this boss. Time to get captured and taken to Castle Hein. This area is pretty uneventful, but getting through gets me to my next boss, Hein. Hein has an elemental barrier which makes him absorb all elements except one, which he is weak to. Normally you'd want a scholar here, however white mages also have the ability to see weaknesses, though less frequently because spell slots, and thanks to the power of elemental staves, I can actually target elemental types. Hein also has the decency to have a predictable pattern to his attacks. By getting in the right rhythm of Libra, heal, staves, I can pretty safely whittle away his HP. There is a bit of a concern that I might run out of Libras, but that never ends up happening. Then King Argus gives me a wheel, take this to Cid to get another airship. Real glad Cid has so many of these lying around. And it's down to the drowned world below. Stop by this wreck to wake up this lady. Grab a crystal shard, and it's into this cave to deal with my next problem child, Kraken. Just like Salamander, my best offensive option is to lean into using elemental staves, specifically the light staff for some okay lightning damage. Kraken can hit hard on single targets with Blizzara, but he prefers not to target the same character more than once, for some reason. White mages still don't have any meaningful buffs at this level, but it ends up being fine. Kraken's single target damage is pretty high, but he doesn't seem to have any blaze equivalent to be actually dangerous. Hooray! The world is undrowned. Let's press on. And this city has absolutely nothing helpful to me, which is a real bummer. I want better magic, and armor for that matter. Down into the sewer to meet this woman who gives me the levergrass shoes to access the next dungeon, and the next boss, Goldor. Goldor isn't too interesting of a boss, but he does have the fun ability to completely ignore all my magic damage. This means I need to actually move my white mages into the front row and just spam attacks, which actually don't deal too terrible of damage. I mean, it's definitely not good, but it's a bit better than I expected. And I don't think Goldor even has any physical attacks to target the front row, so it's not even a detriment. Not being able to use magic to effectively attack does make this fight take longer, but it's not really that much more difficult, just time consuming. Goldor's dead, our airship is free, and now I can fly around this lovely world. First stop is this little town, which sells better bracers for my party. Then over to Saronia to get shot down, and my next boss is Garuda, which is weak to wind, but sadly Aroga is just barely locked behind this boss. Real bummer. I'm pretty sure I'm too low a level to win this fight, but let's give it a try anyway to at least get a baseline. And yeah, I'm correct. Garuda loves to spam lightning, and while my healing is good, it's not that good. Time to get some levels. I can't wait to get access to some higher level spells. Back into the fight with more experience, and this is actually the most damage I've been dealing all run. Garuda must be really weak to wind damage, and I have enough HP to usually survive 2 lightnings in a row. This is essential to making sure I can properly heal up to not die. This fight actually goes pretty quickly, particularly compared to other bosses in this game. This gives me the Nautilus airship, but before that, I can buy some new armor from the unlocked Saronia shops, and Tier 5 magic from the unlocked magic shop, giving me Curaga, Raise, and my first actual buff, Protect. Oh, and Rune and Golem staves. These have better stats and can cast Blizzaga and Break, respectively. Next destination is Doga's Manor. Here I can buy 6th level spells. I can't afford most of them, and also don't have any spell slots of that level, but I do pick up Aroga as it's the most important spell for me to be sure I have, as it'll be my next big damage boost. Then Doga casts a spell to let my airship be a submarine. Wait, why was this airship called the Nautilus if it couldn't already go underwater? This underwater path takes me to Doga's village, which has no buildings, but does sell all the spells of levels 1 through 7. I can't afford or use any of the spells I don't already have, but I will be back later to get all of these. Let's do some shenanigans. The Sunken Cave has a whole bunch of nothing for me, but it is good experience. Next stop is back to Chocobo Town to pick up some more magic keys for the next dungeon. And then to that dungeon, the Temple of Time. Nothing interesting here, and no boss, just a loot. Take the loot over to Unei's shrine because it's time for her to wake up. She can then break the rocks to open up the next dungeon. The shop in this dungeon even sells better armor, which is always nice. Completing this dungeon gets me access to the Invincible, a shiny airship with a bed, a bunch of shops, and it can fly over the mountains around the map. But before I go anywhere with that, a brief trip back to Doga's village to stock up on some more spells. Now it's time to actually take the Invincible through this very stupid mountain range. Listen, I get locking off a dungeon behind tall mountains, but this is obnoxious. Cave of Shadows navigated, it's time for the next boss, Ekatonker. Start by casting Protect, then my very limited supply of Arogas, which do deal pretty good damage. However, I only have 1 spell slot per person, and my party goes down because, yeah, it turns out I may be a bit underleveled, particularly for a white mage only run. Time to do some grinding. I think I'll grind on the world map because the enemies may give less experience, but they are also much easier to take out, and my healing ship is right there. Okay, back into the fight. I still only have 1 cast of Aroga per person, but I am a bit more durable. Not a lot more durable, mind you, which does end up being a bit of a problem when a boss likes to spam Quake for all target damage, and physical attacks for big single target damage. On the plus side, even basic arrow is dealing pretty decent damage. And while I don't have a ton of casts of Curaga, I do have a few, and they are pretty effective. After playing White Mage Yo-Yo for a bit, I switched to spamming arrow with 2 party members while the other 2 just spam all target Cura. And that is actually enough to see this fight through. Nice. That done, it's time to head back to Doga's mansion and get into the required, but also very pointless, fight against Doga and Unei. First up is Doga. I'm using the rune staff to cast Blizzaga to conserve MP. I really don't have very many high-level spell slots for Aroga, and I'd like to save them for Unei. Doga's attacks aren't usually that dangerous, but he does occasionally cast Flare, which deals between 900 and 1100 every time he casts it, which is enough to fully KO a white mage about 50% of the time. I really wish I'd brought a stock of Phoenix Downs at some point, because wow, I am sure using a lot of them. And I'll admit my damage isn't optimal. But I do recall from my Red Mage run that this was about the point that bosses started to be a bit tankier than they probably should be. And considering I'm using the same staves with the same spell, it's not ideal. Okay, there's Doga. Let's see if Unei is any better. First up, I don't need to conserve my MP anymore. Bad news, Eureka only deals like 2 Blizzagas worth of damage. Unei does love to cast spells. I think it's time to use those shining curtains I picked up earlier to cast Reflect on myself, which works quite well. You know, I never checked, is Break better than Blizzaga? Yes, it is. Then I fully do a stupid, and I cast Cure on the mages with Reflect, while using a High Potion on the mage without Reflect. Okay, well that was a fully backwards turn. Zeph, great work. Okay, that took a while, and I'm a bit underleveled. Let's go do some grinding, especially now that I have the Invincible so I can access the Bahamut Cave. Time to try this fight again, and now I have 3 times as many Eureka casts, and... okay, that's 2 to 3 times stronger damage, which means Doga goes down very quickly. That still took most of my Eureka's, but I can use a few more on Unei and then switch to arrows and healing. I didn't really level that much, but the few levels I did get seem to have made all the difference. This is way better than before. I mean, it still would be nice if Unei would have chilled out and let me heal before attacking, but maybe I'm being petty. Unei and Doga have died, so now I have the keys I need to access the final dungeon. But first, back to Doga's village to buy the last of my level 7 spells. Wait, I can buy these on the Invincible. Why am I here? Then walk through these statues to break them, then walk all the way back to the airship to cross this mountain strip. All that's left are the final dungeons. Will this be easy, or will it suck? First, into the big maze to face off against Titan, which functions basically identical to the Hecatoncare fight. Were they just running out of storage space on the NES cartridge? Is that why the endgame fights end up feeling so samey? Good question to investigate later. For now, Protect shields my party from physical attacks while I spam Break from rune staves and heal intermittently. It's certainly not a quick fight, but it is simple enough that I can mostly alternate who is curing and let the auto-battle command take over from there. And with Titan's death, I gain access to the final set of jobs that I care about, and can change my entire party to Devouts. Devout is just a strictly better upgrade to White Mage in basically every way. And most notably, it gives me a lot more high-level spell slots, and I'll be able to cast Holy very shortly. I use the Eureka key to access the world of Eureka. There are a lot of chests here I don't really want or care about, but here, at the end, I can buy Tier 8 magic, which means Holy is now online. I immediately head back out to face down Scylla. Holy damage is pretty good, in both directions actually. Scylla seems to really like spells, so let's try out some Reflect status, and this time, try not to mess it up. Scylla does have physical attacks, but she definitely prefers to cast spells that I can reflect back at her. This unlocks the best staff in the game, which casts Cure. Great. Well, time to do a bit of grinding here so I can afford the remaining level 8 spells that I'll likely never use. That done, it's time to climb the tower. Nothing interesting here other than some chests that contain elixirs and another Elder Staff. Then why is the one in Eureka guarded? This game. There's some dragons, then I get rescued, then it's time for Bane of My Existence, Zande. Open by casting Holy, and wow, it's so different seeing 4-digit damage numbers for this fight. And I have enough spellcasting, and mine, to actually heal my party a decent amount with Curaja and Curaga. I basically just spam Holy on Zande and he goes down. Beating Zande at level 41? Without screaming? Imagine. You know, as this cutscene plays out, I wonder if I did the right thing switching to Devout at the end. Maybe I should have stuck with White Mage like I stuck with Red Mage. I mean, the fights were going okay. Maybe the ending wouldn't have been too bad. Oh wait, that's right. The last segment of fights sucks. I'm not actually going to go through every boss in this endgame boss rush. Frankly, it took a while and wasn't actually interesting. I forget that in the Pixel remaster at least, these bosses just have way too much HP. And yeah, a fair point could be leveled that maybe I'm under-leveled, except I don't actually think I am, because this isn't actually difficult. I'm just spamming Holy, then spamming Eureka when the Holies run out. And I'm just using the classes you would normally have access to. I think the issue is, this game doesn't have enough interesting mechanics for its bosses, so the only real option to make them interesting or difficult was to just give them more HP and spam high-level magic. Which, okay, I guess, but then to put 6 fights one after another where that is basically all that happens? I mean, I guess the two-headed dragon has an interesting mechanic in that it deals enough damage to one-shot anyone in my party, so I have to spend a bunch of turns just trying to heal up. I actually switched from full life to raise because any HP value is meaningless. But that's the problem. The most interesting of these final 4 fights literally does nothing but physical attacks. And if you're noticing my HP is gradually rising, it's because I actually did a bit of grinding between bosses in here in the hopes of making these final fights less tedious. It didn't really work. Cloud of Darkness, do you mind? I'm ranting a bit here. Yes, I'm very impressed by your one attack that you spam on repeat. It's very fun, very interesting, but I have complaining to do. If only to annoy that one person in comments who gets mad when I criticize things. Joke's on you, it's spite all the way down. Oh, game's over. And that is Final Fantasy III, completed with only white mages and devouts. And it was, well, largely what I expected. Pretty fun and interesting, and it slowly became more tedious. Even switching to devouts at the end didn't really fix the tedium. I mean, it meant I didn't spend hours grinding up to level 99, but honestly the endgame of FF3 is really its weakest part. We'll resume this series next Friday in Final Fantasy XII. Why no FF5? We'll get to it. I did want to shout out that I do have a Patreon, linked in the description. I spend a lot of time making these videos, so if you enjoyed the video, want to support the channel, and are financially stable enough to do so, that exists. No pressure though, this channel is free to enjoy for everyone, and will remain that way. For now, if you like this video, be sure to hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of this, feel free to subscribe. Hey! Maybe leave a comment if you have something you'd like to say. But whatever you decide to do, have a safe trip home.